I suck at this kind of stuff. Hey, brothers and sisters, I'm sitting here with a couple of good friends. Tim Hemingway, say hello, Tim.
Hello, Tim. No, just kidding. Good to be here, Bill.
And Scott Woodward. Scott, there we go. Scott is in Vegas with me, across town. Tim is in Utah. I don't even know what part of Utah you're in anymore.
I am in Spanish Fork, which is about as far south as civilization goes. After me, it's just like farmland till we hit Vegas. So, and I also wanted to say real quick,
my daughter lives in St. George, so I know there's a one town in between.
That's a gas station between here and Vegas. No, I was just going to say I haven't seen Scott for quite some time. Last time I saw him, he didn't have the big white beard, and we got to share bunk beds at NAMM.
Oh man, that's right. It was like NAMM. What, 2019?
I don't remember. I just thought it would be fun to bring up that Scott and I shared bunk beds like we were like 7-year-olds.
No doubt. Hey, I've graduated. I'm 8 now.
Okay, well, I mean, bunk beds with Scott was better than like the king size bed with Bill. So, you know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that wasn't going to work. So anyway, all of us have been doing recording. I've finished an album worth of stuff, and I'm starting on a second one with another singer. Scott's been really involved with me and all of that, and he has started to do basically studio work from his house on a lot of different projects. Tim's been probably been more involved with recording than any of us. Started out as a recording engineer at one point. I have a feeling from talking to a lot of other people that one of the reasons people hesitate is they think this is going to cost a lot of money and they don't know what they need in terms of gear. So we're just going to kind of talk about each of our rigs and what we're using, and even more importantly, what it cost and if it's stuff we already had on hand. So and who wants to start?
I will. I'm the cheapest.
Okay, yeah, that is like epically cheap.
Oh man, I'm like Mr. Free. My wife hates the fact that I'll spend 2 weeks researching something to save $10. Okay. So when I started, I did have a copy of Cubase, but it wasn't working with my computer, my interface, and the speakers, and it was driving me insane. My wife is like, just buy a new computer and start over.
Let's back up, Scott. How old is your computer?
Oh man, it's at least 10 years old.
Okay, so there we go.
At least, and I'm running Windows 10, and I upgraded from XP on this computer with 4 gig of RAM, and maybe.
Does it like take an hour to start up?
No, there's nothing really on here. I mean, it's a spare computer that we had. My wife upgraded to a new one, so I wiped her computer of everything on here that was not absolutely necessary, and I only use it in the studio. Fair enough, once in a while I'll watch YouTube when I'm farting around, but it's just for the studio. So it goes on pretty quick. It's old, but it was free.
Nice.
So Cubase was out, it wasn't working, blah, 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 blah. I watched a whole bunch of videos and came up with Reaper. Why? It was free.
Well, it's not totally free, right?
Well, here's the thing. It's not free, but it's free. A full paid version for personal use is $60.
Right.
But if you want to, you can click through the donate page every time until death.
So I just have to throw out here, I know a lot of people when they get started, they use if they're using a Mac, they use like GarageBand. And in my experience, like there are some free recording programs out there, and Reaper is probably the best equivalent to like a GarageBand that you can get on a PC without spending a bunch of money. So I actually think that's a great way to go. I know other people have used like Audacity. Reaper's so much better. So I support that, Scott, and I also support the clicking through the ad every time. That's amazing.
But I didn't want, I bought it. I paid the $60 to get, and you can get the full version for free. There's nothing different by paying. The only difference is you get to not have that ad to click through, and there's unlimited updates, and they update the program all the time. And I was going to buy Pro Tools. I wanted to buy a physical copy of Pro Tools, but everything was the subscription. And
Yeah, you
everything
can't buy it anymore.
Yeah, it's all subscription based. And this studio is not for making really money. I mean, I don't record bands, or it's not a business. So to have a monthly subscription for a DAW was ridiculous. I mean, I could get away with using Audacity and do what I needed to do, really, but I wanted a studio. So I got Reaper. A bunch of people came, the people who made Reaper are the people who invented Winamp. And they sold Winamp and made a boatload of money and came up with Reaper and made it affordable for everybody. And it does everything any other DAW does. I can use any plugin. It comes with a whole bunch of plugins to start. The only difference with their plugins is the GUI's not all pretty. You don't get big knobs, and there's not a bunch of different fancy colors. It's generic, but it's $60. And people make records with Reaper.
There you go. So Tim, what are you using in terms of software?
So software, primarily I'm using Studio One.
Okay.
So from PreSonus. I know Scott mentioned Pro Tools. I was a Pro Tools guy. Back when I worked in the studio, I was like certified on Pro Tools back when it was like version 6 or 7 or something like that. And the funny thing is, I did continue with Pro Tools for years. I actually have probably 3 or 4 older Pro Tools interfaces going back to a 001 sitting around here.
Oh, wow. I had one of those.
Yeah, but what I realized is the kind of same thing as Scott is when they got to a subscription base, like I just don't do enough work. Like the work I do make money on is I do some podcast editing. I've done some voiceover work, things like that, but I'm just not doing enough regularly. Because most of my studios now just, for me to goof around and have fun, or my kids to have fun or whatever, and to record their bands or their songs or whatever. So yeah, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. And so several years ago, this would be back with the Live to Play years, I actually got a copy of PreSonus Studio One, the second version of Pro, and I used that for a while, but probably, I don't know, a year ago, I got PreSonus's the IO Station 24C, which is kind of it's a interface. It's got 2 mic inputs on it, but it's also got their fader port built into it as well. And I think they're probably $320. And that came with the artist version of PreSonus Studio One, which is fantastic. I've never even needed to go back and upgrade to the Pro version. So I have the old version of the Pro version, but I have a version 5 of the artist. So that's what I've been using recently. And it's great. And once again, like PreSonus Studio One, they also have a free version there. I know there's a lot of limitations on it, but it's another great option people can look into for super cheap. And, one of the things I had looked into, and I think people fall down this trap, which is like when you get started, you think like, I need like 10 mic inputs. So I do have a 24 channel mixer over here that I've had for probably a decade. And I used to have, all the mic outs going into the 001, so that I could have 8 mic inputs. So if I recorded a drum kit or something, like I had all the stuff to do it. But the truth is I found out like I rarely use more than 3 to 4 mics max. So I'll use the PreSonus interface for 2 mics. And if I need a couple more, the mixer has a USB out. I could do 2 more off of that really quickly and use the 2 interfaces and get up to 4 microphones, like super easy. And if I need more than that, then you kind of have to do a little bit of mixing on the board and have some things mixed together in like the different channels. But even at 4 mics, you can do a great drum kit. But the truth is like most drums I do now are going to be digital anyway. Like it's so much in a home environment or whatever, you get so much better sound using plugins and things like that. Or I do have a digital drum kit. Oh, other way. I don't know. Anyway, I have a digital drum kit in here, and it's actually really funny. I'm running into a super old Alesis drum frame that's like a mid 90s one that I picked up for probably $25. And then it has MIDI out, but I just use like a cheap MIDI to USB adapter I picked up on Amazon for like $25. I can plug that. So we're probably like $50 into the drum brain. I plug that in my computer, and then I have thousands of different drum kits I can map it to, because I'm just using MIDI mapping at that point anyway. So much easier, especially in a home environment, than trying to record. I mean, Bill knows this. He knows me. Like with the studio, I used to be all about like recording your amp and miking everything and getting so into it. And when you have a real studio and you have all the mics and the setup, like it sounds fantastic. But the truth is, like in a home environment, I started goofing around. And once again, I blame Bill for this. This is one of the more expensive pieces of gear that I have, but I did pick up the Line 6 HX Stomp. Got it used on Reverb for probably 400. So it's basically a limited version of the Helix. It has all the sounds. It just, you can't have as many effects at the same time. It's like limited like 6 blocks instead of 12 or whatever Bill has on his fancy one. But I found out from like a home recording standpoint, using that for direct recording was better than I would ever find recording an amp in the house. And then Bill once again convinced me to make a bad decision, and then I upgraded to the HX Native, which is like $70 more if you own it. So I can actually just use it right, do direct line to my computer. I can do all my amps and effects and everything right in my computer. And I guess I would say the most expensive part of my rig here is my computer, which I do have one of the MacBook Air, like the M1s, and I upgraded the RAM on it. So, but it honestly, I could be recording on a much more basic system. I actually bought the laptop as much for other work and projects as I did for recording. So,
Right. Well, I started, I was a Studio One guy too when I first started doing this. But I came at it, I hadn't used a DAW at all since Pro Tools a million years ago, and DAWs have gotten so much better and can do so many more things. And honestly, I was just, I didn't know anything about virtual instruments. I didn't really know anything about plugins, and had to learn all that. I ended up, only because at that point in time, I was still working for the Big Fruit company. And I used to work for Apple anyway, because
I
of
was going
that.
to say Papaya. Is there
Yeah.
a company called Papaya?
I thought it was Dole.
Yeah.
The pineapple plantation. That's where Bill worked.
That's about it, right? The plantation part of it, at least. But anyway, so I got Logic for free. Everybody gets GarageBand for free, and I did try to figure out GarageBand, and it's just like, I'm too old to.
I wasn't down either.
Yeah, it's just, I don't understand the interface. It's not like, at least a DAW, it can be presented like as a console, as something that I kind of understand. And once you get into, what plugins are basically just outboard gear in software form, you can kind of get that. But yeah, so I got Logic for free, and so therefore that has become my DAW of choice. I like it a lot. I just find it really, really easy to use. It's just I can't think of a time really when the DAW has thrown up a barrier to me that I couldn't get past pretty easily. And for me, that's a big part of it, is not having to think about it and learn a bunch of new stuff every time I want to sit down and record something.
Yeah, no one wants to read War and Peace just to record, your guitar.
Well, one of the things that I love about Studio One, and honestly, when I had the Pro version, like I dragged my feet forever on using it. I'd always just end up going back to Pro Tools because I just knew it so well, even though I had an older version of Pro Tools.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
When my basically what happened is my old MacBook died and I couldn't use my old Pro Tools system anymore. And it was too old to use on any of my newer computers. So I kind of was forced into a decision of either learning Studio One or going and buying something new. Cause I, once again, tried GarageBand. GarageBand is fine if you're starting out, but really it was too limited. I didn't like it. So I went to Studio One, and what I found is they have so many killer tutorials on YouTube that I literally sat down and watched tutorials for about an hour, and I've never looked back.
I think that's a big part of it too, is support, and whether that support is from the company or is from a community of users. But yeah, being able to, and I know Scott's a big, if he doesn't know how to do something, he'll go find 100 YouTube videos and be the guy who shows me how to do it, later on.
I need to have someone show me instead of reading it. Reading to me, because it's all your own personal interpretation when you're reading it. But when someone's telling you how to do it and they're showing you, well, this is the way. I get it. As it's just the way my brain works.
So on the computer side, for me, now as we're recording this, I am using a ridiculously overpowered MacBook Pro now. That
Of course you are.
well, I mean, look, I figured out a month before it happened that Apple was going to fire me, so I used every single discount known to man, every discount that I had available, and bought a computer that I know is going to last me for at least 10 years. But all the recording that I did for the record, and the first single just came out and actually became a real thing like last weekend. That was all done on the computer that's over on this side of my office now, which I use for email and just writing and things like that, because like Scott has his studio computer, that this MacBook Pro, I don't even do email on it. It's got 2 terabytes of storage. And I still don't do email on it because, I want this to be the studio. But I did that all on a 2012 Mac Mini that I already had, that I was using for PA stuff and everything. I think that's another part of this equation, at least for me and Scott, is on the interface side, because when you're looking at doing digital recording, you have to have some way to get that analog sound that you're creating into a computer, and that's an interface. But for Scott and I don't think this is going to apply to Tim as much. We had PAs that we had already had for bands. I mean, Scott used up until a couple of years ago. Scott, you were doing more than 200 dates a year, and you had a PA. I had a PA for band gigs and everything, and those just kind of double as the interface, right? For you,
I have a PA as well, just for what it's worth.
I know, but you didn't have it because you're doing a ton of gigs, and it's like, oh, I can use that for that. I know you still have it. I mean, you've got a 24 channel board sitting there.
Yeah, I use the Behringer XR18. And that's it's way more than I need for an interface. I mean, I got 16 ins, and like you guys, I keep 2 things plugged in there. I don't record live drums here. I got a digital kit, but I use the computer kit most of the time. But if I wanted to, I could record 16 things at once. But
well, and the funny thing is, you bring up Behringer, which I think a lot of people will look at and go, oh, that's like the entry level. But the fact of the matter is, my 24 channel mixer I have here is the Harbinger, which is like the Guitar Center like house brand, which once again is probably built in the same factory in China. And the truth is, it gives me a nice clean sound. Like I use the PreSonus interface because there's a lot of things I like about it. But the fact of the matter is, I could use that mixer, or if you're looking at any mixer in probably the $150 to $200 range, it's going to have USB out and going to give you 2 channels, and that's whether you're looking at Mackie or Behringer or Yamaha or whoever. And to get started, I think Bill put that out there, and that was going to be kind of a question I was going to ask: is if somebody wants to get started, where do you get started? And it's like, well, if you've got a mixer with USB out, you're already there.
Absolutely.
And if you don't, brands like Focusrite and PreSonus, Behringer as well. I like the first 2 probably better in this scenario, but they all have interfaces that are like $100, $150 to get you started with like 2 channels in, which once again, to get started, you don't really need much more than that.
That's true. And I have a PreSonus 32R, which is their big 32 input rack mixer. And so, yeah, I could record up to 32 inputs at the same time. Now that's down in my garage, which I was set up as a rehearsal space. And when we first started doing band stuff, and we were using that down there and recording rehearsals, that's where I started to learn how to do this. I moved everything up into my office. When Apple fired me, I didn't need this office anymore. It's like, oh, this can be the studio now. And I didn't want to put the big PreSonus thing up here and have to drag it back and forth if I was still doing rehearsals. So I bought another interface, and I also bought a Behringer. And it's the Euphoria, I think it's called. Yeah. And it's a 4 input little interface, but it has Midas preamps. And I had a couple, I asked a couple of people, I was actually kind of going back and forth between, do I get the Behringer or do I get the Focusrite? They were about the same amount of money. And I talked to one engineer who just has a big hate boner for Behringer.
Most people do, honestly, and that's okay.
Yeah, no one. I think most people think of Behringer as like Peavey back in the day. No one really wanted to use Peavey unless you didn't have any money.
Right. And Corey's thing when I said was like, he said, I don't think the Focusrite's really any better. It's only okay, but I would buy that just so you can avoid giving money to Uli, which I thought was kind of, but Corey used to work for EV, so there's there's some residual hatred probably there.
Well, and I think you hit on something there, which is, if you were to look at Behringer 10, 15 years ago, there's probably some truth for some of the negativity.
Sure.
But now that they own Midas and they own TC Electronic, I mean, nobody's, what was that?
Turbo Sound.
Turbo Sound. I was going to say nobody has any hesitancy to use any of those other brands. And the fact of the matter is a lot of their own Behringer stuff has improved because of that. I actually this is a totally random thought, but I was thinking about this. I was looking at this the other day. So, one of the things that I had mentioned, and Bill hasn't gone into it, but he and I both use the Helix brand line 6 for amp modeling and effects and all of those different things. But a lot of that goes into like the amp IRs, where you can basically get a digital response of an amp, right? And just talking about TC Electronic, they just came out with a new IR pedal. It's like a mini pedal. It's like maybe $130, and you can load up to 100 different cabinet or amp and cabinet examples into it. And I'm going like, you don't even have to go buy something fancy to get a whole variety of different sounds, because that was the thing. Like back in the day, the big thing with the studio is you'd go in and they'd have, a dozen different amps you could choose from, and they would have 50 different guitars. And as you can see, Bill in the background, he still has that many guitars. And if I wasn't standing in front of mine, I probably do too. And Scott, I mean, all of us have problems when it comes to the instruments, but once again, none of us are gonna have that many amps in their house. I mean, I think I've got a couple, but as soon as you get into like those like the amp and cabinet IRs, like it will blow your mind how much you get access to. And once again, it's not that expensive to get into.
It's not. I just Tim and I both use. It's called Helix and Native, which is basically a full Helix 4 unit in software. And so it's got 800 million amps and every effect you can name except for your Dr. Robert one, which you haven't been able to find yet.
Let's not talk about that pedal, because that would be, once again, nobody should spend like $300 on a pedal. But I should say that's my one problem is, and Bill laughs at me about this, is I do have the Helix, but I just finished wiring my pedal board the other day, and I think there's like 20 different pedals on it, and I've got like a loop on there so that I can turn pedals, like whole sections of pedals on and off. So I mean, I do love the pedals.
Yeah, we all love the pedals. Got to have the pedals.
I stopped. I just got, when I found the Helix, I got rid of everything. I still have a Tech 21 fly rig. That's my backup. That's like, if I was still gigging, I would carry that with me. And if the Helix completely bit the dust in the middle of the show, I could go on and finish it with a fly rig if I had to. So but yeah, we're both using Helix. It's not free, but if you buy another Line 6 product or you wait for a sale, I don't think either one of us paid more than about $75-$80.
I think the deal was they do it twice a year and it's like $70. Yeah. And it gives you the full, and the crazy thing about it is I've got, once again, the either the HX Stomp, which I have, which is like the pedal board, like the smaller version, or the HX Effects, which are once again the $400 to $500 range. Those are more limited than what you can do in HX Native, because once you get into Native, like you have all the capabilities, once again, from a recording standpoint, that you would have in one of the larger units. So that's kind of cool, is they don't limit you, even if you buy like the entry level version. So
right. I'm using what is that? IK Multimedia Amplitude free download. I think it's Amplitude 4. Now, I know most guitar players are like, I hate that. It sucks. It sounds terrible, but it's free and it's a starting point.
You know, the truth is I used Amplitude for years until I bought HX, and obviously the Helix stuff's better, but
Sure,
I had to
sure.
pay for it. And like Amplitude will do some cool things. Like they released their new line of pedals, and one of the pedals they released was like their X Drive, which had like a bazillion different like drive sounds in it and whatnot. And if you had Amplitude, they just gave you the effect for free, like the digital version of it. And they sound killer. I mean, the pedal itself is probably a $300 pedal, but you'll get the digital version of it for recording for nothing. Like there's no shame in Amplitude.
Yeah, because I'm not a guitar player. I'll usually go in there and use one of the presets, it's like the Slash preset or Brian Adams or somebody's that will work for me.
Well, that's a really good point, though, but and this is true across all of the plugins and everything else. Is there's a million existing presets, often artist presets, and well, it will at least give you a starting point. So I know we need to get it wrapped up because some of us have to get back to actual jobs and things like that. Well, actually, only one of us.
Sorry. I got a bunch of kids I have to feed.
Yeah, there you go. But I think the bottom line comes down to when you really get down to it, you need, depending on what you're going to do, you may need a mic. If you're just recording instrumental music, you probably don't even need that. You need an interface, you need some kind of computer, and you need the software to run it. What we've shown you here is that Scott's got a 10-year-old PC that he's using. I recorded an entire album worth of stuff on a 10-year-old, pretty much entry-level Mac. None of us paid $1 million for the software. Often it will come as an add-on. If you buy an interface, it may have a version of the software available. If not, you can go on and if you want to be like Scott and click through every donation page, burn out to the end.
I did it until I learned, and then I bought it.
Right, but
once I started getting in, I mean, because I'm using the Surface controller, and I got a nice set of Kali monitors now. I'm probably all in $3,000 if I bought everything brand new, but out of pocket pandemic money, I probably spent $800.
Well, and a great point there is, I think if you're trying to build this up, like Reverb is your best friend. You can get stuff there cheap for used. It's better than eBay generally. So, I mean, once again, like my whole system is probably overkill for most home owners or home recording enthusiasts or whatever. But I've also been building this up over the last, honestly, like 20 years.
Yeah, it's gear that we all have had.
But the truth is, like what Bill was saying, is you're going to need a way to get your audio in. So a basic interface. That will probably come with software, but if you're using a Mac, you can also use GarageBand. You can also use Reaper. You can use PreSonus. They have a free version. Pro Tools has a free version, except for you can record like 3 songs on it, and then you have to pay for it. So, but there's a bunch of options you can get started with.
Pro Tools Blue or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And then obviously, if you're going to record, you probably do need some kind of decent microphone to record your vocals on. But other than that, like, yeah, I think all of us have studio monitors for listening to, but really all you need is a good set of headphones.
Absolutely. I do most of my mixing on headphones. I have the Slate VSX system, which does modeling and everything and models rooms. I didn't have that when I started, and I really only do that because I'm in a house and I can't make a ton of noise. Tim's in a basement; he might be able to get away with it more.
I won these on Music Connection.
Nice.
Free.
Okay, so we need to wrap this up, guys. Thanks very much. I think, but bottom line is, Scott said he was about $800 out of pocket into his system before I bought this crazy overpowered Mac, which I'm not going to even include because it was ridiculous. But all the other stuff I did, I was into it for maybe even had I had to pay for Logic. Maybe $500 at the outside to get started.
And I would say the required equipment I have is easily like 500 or less. And honestly, if I was trying to get started right now, I've actually helped a bunch of people get started with recording setups, and you can do it for probably $200 to $300.
Yeah, easily.
If you know what you're looking for, you can get like a pretty solid setup for that price.
I've seen
And then after that, you can
Center
spend as much as you
shelf
want.
yeah, and
It just keeps going up after that.
Guitar Center has, their daily deal stuff and everything. I get emails for it. And I have seen on a number of occasions a whole setup from somebody like Mackie or something like that that includes a mic and an interface, which comes with software and a pair of headphones and everything else for 250 bucks.
Yeah.
Which so bottom line, it comes down to is if you're not getting into this because you think it's going to cost you $1 million, you got three really cheap guys over here who can all bear witness to the fact that you really don't have to spend a ton.
Yeah, a couple $100 and you could be making records. I mean, all right, you're not gonna be making records, but
You know,
you can record.
I was going to say I was sad I didn't even get into my whole vocal booth, which is made out of PVC pipe and moving blankets from Harbor Freight.
That's part 2, man. Part 2.
Oh,
Next time.
that is part 2. Next time. Okay, guys. Thanks very much. Tim, go back to work. And, us old, not working guys, we'll go do whatever we do.
All right. Take care, guys. See you later.
See you.
Bye.